The last change in information processing that I'm going to talk about in this lecture is attention. And we could talk about both selected and divided attention and how both of those are affected by the aging process or these biological changes. So, as an example, if you have to engage in two tasks at once, especially when one is more complicated, this becomes harder with age. You could see in this picture here of an older gentleman who is texting while driving. Is this something that is easy to do for anyone at any age? No, you might argue that it is, but we know by accident rates that it's not. But if we're driving in, let's say, heavy traffic and trying, or if an older adult has trouble using technology, so the phone is actually the complex task, this is even harder. And you couple this with processing speed deficits, and accidents are more likely to happen. Um, that said, older individuals are less likely to do this than younger individuals because of those risk-taking behaviors. But it's as a whole, it's harder for older individuals to try to tackle two tasks at once, to pay attention to multiple things at once. So this is kind of a form of divided attention. It's also harder to switch back and forth between two things that they're trying to attend to. In this little example right here, if we were in class, I'd bring up those numbers one by one to see how long it takes you to respond. But so the way that this task works is if it's black, tell me odd or even, and if it's red, don't say anything at all. In some ways, this is an inhibition task. So can you refrain from saying something? But it's also an attention task. These are both parts of executive functioning skills. So we'll talk more in just a second about why some of these changes are happening, but I'm going to give you a hint that it also comes down in part to processing speed and memory. Obviously, attention is important in all life domains. I mean, we're constantly observing the world around us and having to make decisions, and all of this comes down to attention, at least as one thing that we're doing. But I just wanted to find and show you some real life attention scenarios where we could see how, if you're older and having more trouble with attention, this could be potentially problematic. So, in this first scenario, a truck driver, so imagine that this is a 50 or 60-year-old truck driver, is driving on the highway and starts passing someone, but as they're passing, they see a sign for their exit. If the driver isn't able to safely pass the other car and pay attention to the signs, they may lose important information or cause danger to themselves and others. So here, divided attention is very important to driving safely and successfully. And if somebody is struggling in this domain or just experiencing normal life changes, this can be more challenging. A server must use their divided attention when attending to a table. They have to remember what the man at table 4 wanted, write down table three's order, and be careful to balance the plates of food that they're holding. Now, servers with lots and lots of experience tend to be practicing these skills. And so even if a server is older, but they've been working as a server for a period of time, they tend to be able to still do these tasks well because they've been practicing those skills. However, if you're throwing an older individual into this domain, and this is let's say they've retired from a different job and this is a part-time job just to spend their time, this might be more challenging because those skills aren't as good as they once were. Similarly, if a customer asks about the sales when paying at the cash register and the cashier has to scan and bag the items while also thinking about the answer to the question, it's switching between two tasks. Like I'm ringing you up, but I'm also trying to answer your question. Lastly, this is similar to the driving while texting example, but while you're eating and talking at the same time, or even when you're watching TV and talking on the phone, you're using divided attention. So essentially showing you that these selective and divided attention skills are always around us and how they can impact our day-to-day lives if we're losing some of those abilities or those abilities aren't as good as they once were. So why do we see these attention declines? As I already mentioned, part of this is because of declines in just processing speed. So it's just harder to process information. So if we're trying to divide our attention and it takes longer to do that, it becomes more challenging to just pay attention. As I already mentioned, also inhibition is harder. So this is like our inability to push irrelevant information out of the way or to just be less resistant to interference in general. Um, but by and large, I want to talk about how there are lots of individual differences. This has already come up. I've already talked about the server who is going to be better at paying attention to what his or her customers need because they've practiced doing that. Similarly, there are occupations that require us to have better attention skills. I mean, I don't know if it's been studied as a professor, but professors are always attending to information that is presented by our students, let's say, or in the things that we have to read. A classic example for an occupation that needs, really good attention skills is a flight operator. That's not the term. I can't think of the term at the moment. An air traffic controller. There we go. And so, these kinds of individuals are going to be practice these skills on the daily, and then these skills are going to be strengthened or not as weakened as somebody who doesn't have to practice these skills. And just to bring it all home for processing speed, attention, and memory, for all of these, older adults can compensate. So, for processing speed, if they're trying to look further ahead and they're engaging in behaviors where they have to anticipate things. So, people who are typing a lot or playing the piano, they're thinking ahead or I mean not necessarily even consciously, but they're practicing those skills. For attention, again, practice, practice, practice. Pilots and air traffic controllers are having less decline. For memory, trying to remember at your own pace and just practicing those skills. Again, so these changes are going to happen on some level because they're based in biology, but our environment matters so very much. So that's the end of this cognitive development information in midlife, and the next presentation will be on some psychosocial changes that are happening in midlife.